Hey everyone! I'm Mary Joanna, and the topic of today's short talk is dating after 50. So this is a subject that has been requested of me very frequently of late, and I've been cautious about creating an episode on the topic because I'm not yet in my 50s. I haven't yet personally experienced what it might be like, so take what I say with a grain of salt. That said, I've consulted with many folks, men and women in this demographic, and I think I have a few points on the subject worth listening to. So let's get to it. First and foremost, you have to understand that after 50, pretty much everyone that you might be dating is going to have a Purple Heart. That is to say, pretty much everyone will have been wounded in battle. And that's because being wounded is the only legitimate reason our culture accepts for being unmarried. Like, if you're unmarried at 50 and you've never been married, people will look at you like you fell from outer space. On the other hand, if you're unmarried at 50 because your ex-wife cheated on you, took your house and alienated your children, or because you watched your husband die of pancreatic cancer over 3 agonizing and soul-crushing years, guess what? No one is going to ship you back to the front. Now, whether the only socially acceptable way to be unmarried is to be wounded, and this would lead to people exaggerating their wounds in order to escape the pressure and judgment of their friends and family, is for you to decide. However, we can certainly maintain that people are incentivized to do just that. In any case, past a certain point, everyone in the sexual marketplace is going to be wounded. They're going to have some scars, they're going to have some baggage, and this can actually be a pro and a con. It's a con because, as we all know, some folks can't let go of their baggage. Not all wounds heal. Not all wounds are allowed to heal. And these folks are going to be so jaded, or suspicious, or cynical, or doctrinated, or defensive, that it will be next to impossible to have a satisfying relationship with them. On the other hand, if people go through something and they recover from their loss and pain, they might actually have some measure of wisdom and compassion. Like, some soldiers are so traumatized by conflict that they are no longer reliable communicators. However, who would you rather learn about war from? The decorated combat veteran or the West Point graduate who's never been in a fight? And this is why I think we should all be cautious about listening to the musings of overconfident 22-year-olds with respect to what makes relationships work. As I've said previously, pain is the gift that nobody wants. But it is a gift, provided you can learn from it and move forward. And those who have done so are often much better human beings for having suffered than those whose good fortune has protected them from such experiences. Now, the second thing to understand about dating after 50 is that the underlying value exchange is just as applicable now as it always has been. People still enter into relationships when they exchange unequal goods of comparable value. However, what people tend to value tends to shift over the course of a lifespan, and this is reasonable on some level. Marrying someone at 20 because you think they'll take care of you on your deathbed is kind of stupid. Like, you might not ever get there. That could be 70 years in the future. And it doesn't really make sense to prioritize a skill set in selection that, if you ever do use it, won't be needed for the better part of a century. As I discussed in the book, value is psychological. The same assets or traits or attributes might be highly valued at certain stages of life and functionally irrelevant at others. Now, men never really stop desiring young, beautiful women. However, by the time they're 50, they might also consider such women to be inane, fickle, and boring, which will significantly reduce the perceived value of a potential relationship with that demographic. By the same token, women never really stop wanting an emotionally compelling lifestyle and a comfortable way of life. However, by the time they're 50, they might be able to provide this for themselves. They've either cashed out from a previous marriage or they're at the peak of their careers. In fact, by the time you get to this stage of the game, there might actually be very little that you need or want from a relationship. And this can be challenging because need is actually the pretext for relating. Like, it is very difficult, if not impossible, to enter into a relationship with someone who needs or wants nothing from you. And sometimes people need to cultivate need in order to generate the conditions of a relationship, in the same way that sometimes the government needs to create jobs to reduce unemployment. However, this absence of need is also the beautiful promise of dating at this stage of life. Since the individuals involved don't really need anything from each other, they can just be two consenting adults who enjoy spending time together. Like, it doesn't have to be more complicated than that. And how amazing does that sound? You don't have to worry about legal contracts or children or money or lifestyle or all the myriad of things that younger people enter into relationships to get. You don't have illusions that relationships need to last forever in order to be successful. And you may have actually learned a thing or two about how relationships actually work, as opposed to how they're supposed to work. Also, you should have very good self-awareness and insight into what works for you and what doesn't work for you at this stage of life, which makes selection much, much more accurate. You don't need the other person for stuff, because most likely the two of you have plenty of stuff already, which means that you can have a relationship with someone just out of the simple fact that you like them. Wow, that sounds amazing. When I talk with people in this demographic, especially the women, they all tell me that what they're looking for is a real connection. They don't need the money or the kids or the ring. They just want someone with whom they can have a deep emotional connection. And with respect to this desire, I have both good news and bad news. The good news is that it's actually possible to have a real emotional connection with the vast majority of human beings. And the more effective you are as a communicator, the more intelligent you are emotionally, and the more you're able to withhold judgment and empathically enter into another person's experience, the easier it will be for you to have that connection. Being kind and patient and tolerant doesn't hurt either. And the good news is that by the time you're in your 50s, you should be more of those things. And if you're not, like, what the heck are you waiting for? You're definitely not getting any younger. So when are you planning to develop these attributes? So a deep emotional connection doesn't actually require that much. However, the bad news is that it's really hard to discern with whom you are more likely to have that connection. Like, it is far easier to tell who is rich and who is attractive than who is capable of resonating with you emotionally. Even when a person has all the attributes I listed in spades, you typically need a certain amount of time and a certain number of interactions to really figure that out. This makes looking for a connection seem like searching for an invisible needle in a haystack. And you can defend against the hopelessness and frustration that might seep in at this point by remembering that real connections aren't generally found. They're built, and they're typically built by people interested in building them. However, you may need to provide other value in the meantime to maintain the relationship until such time as that connection can be established. Otherwise, the other person might not stick around long enough for you to do so. That's what I got for you today. What do you think? Does this fit with your own experience? Let me know in the comments below, and please send this episode to someone who you think might benefit from its message, as it's word-of-mouth referrals like this that really help to make the channel grow. As always, I appreciate your support, and thank you for listening.